What is good, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of the show. I am joined by Frank Novinec. We just went over that, and I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Guitar player for Hatebreed. Welcome to the show, Frank. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you been holding up here in Florida? You're another Florida resident, so how's it been for you?
I mean, without making anybody mad, we're a little loose. We're a little loose here compared to most states, so it helps that we have warm weather all year. So we're doing the things we need to do to get back to normal, and fortunately, like I said, for us, we're able to be outside all year and things like that. So
Yeah, I will say, it does. It does feel weird doing this podcast, and I talk to other people outside of Florida all the time on it, especially in the industry, and how they're dealing with, um, how their state's handling it or where they're at in what country they're in, yada yada yada. And it's just been so different from what I've experienced personally. But you're someone who's experienced almost the same experience as I have because you're a Florida, you live in Florida as well. So it is this whole time it's just been very strange, and I can see why people get upset, especially in our industry, because obviously a lot of money and a lot of income for a lot of people comes from live entertainment and touring and everything like that. So everyone wants to get back to that, but it's crazy to see things from the Floridian perspective of stuff.
yeah, for sure, definitely, and through all of this, I've just, for the most part, avoided social media for obvious reasons, and everybody has their take, and long before the pandemic, that's how it works with social media. Everybody has a microphone and a platform to speak on. So seen a lot of nasty things on there, and just try to live my life down here. I never get caught up in that, and just I'm more than anything like to have fun in my life, and I just am always doing things for the most part that I don't mind doing, and even if it is work, I just try to have a better attitude about it. So it all comes into play with being down here and being able to be outside and all that. It's I guess there's some light at the end of the tunnel now, and things are starting to get back to normal, and hopefully we come out of it stronger. So
Yeah, and you guys are scheduled to do a couple things this year as well, right? Later in the year.
yeah, I think the next. I know that there's a lot of things that are up in the air, and there's also a couple festivals in September. Probably doesn't hurt that they're down south here. One's in Orlando and others in Alabama, I believe. So, um, you know, things are opening up, and things will get back to normal. Although for a while there, it seemed like it was never going to end.
Yeah, it did become like unfortunately a negative part of life for the last year, and it did, it backed up you guys' album for quite a long time as well.
It did. It did. So it still came out during this whole mess, and we're good for an album every 3 or 4 years now. So we feel that's people are usually ready, and this was weird this time around not being able to go out and support it and play those songs live. But we're looking forward to when we do get back to touring to be able to add a few songs that nobody's heard live yet. So
Yeah,
from the new record.
yeah. So how has that how has the reception of the new record been since it did come out in the pandemic, or in such, but so late in the pandemic as well? Like, how did that affect the reception, or do you think it hindered it or boosted it?
I think probably because you're not out there going to support the album, so we don't have anything to. It's not like this has happened before, so we don't have anything to measure it up against. You know what I mean? So um, the reception's always going to be great from the Hatebreed fan base. We don't stray too far from what brought them there in the first place. I think that when you buy a Hatebreed record, you know that what you're going to get for the most part. It's not like we're going to make a bunch of ballads and be something that we're not. So, it's just, again, goes back to me saying that it's good to have new music out, and, the reception's been good, and we just want to be able to play these songs live again.
Yeah, and you
I'm sorry for the first time.
for the first time, correct? And you guys are slated for like Rebel Rock and Furnace Fest, and those were the festivals I think you mentioned, Orlando and Alabama.
Yeah,
So
and then Aftershock, I think, is after that, or maybe.
yeah.
So
Well, we're gonna slowly get back into it and see how it works out. You know what I mean? But as we kind of have already seen, things have been open for quite some time in our area of the world, so it should go fairly decently, hopefully.
yeah, I mean, baby steps, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing now? So I still think we're a long way from moshing and stage diving in every state in America. So, but baby steps, and we'll get there. So
Yeah, we'll get there. Um, so you weren't one of the original members for Hatebreed, but you did come in, many, 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 many years ago. What is one of the things? Because you already kind of touched base on, like, Hatebreed fans know kind of what Hatebreed kind of brings to the table and the sound they're going to be getting, but the band itself has kind of like eclipsed the hardcore scene for a little. You know what I mean? They became such a broader band, playing to like such a bigger crowd. What are some of the things that kind of like pushed the band in that direction, so to speak? Like when, like Ozfest, like early, I remember early Ozfests and stuff like that. I felt like a not a change, but like a fan base
I th-
change.
I think a lot of things. There's a lot of things that made it so Hatebreed kind of broke out of because nowadays you have bands that come from the hardcore scene and they get success now. You have bands on up and coming, like, or who've already broke and are doing it. But you have your Code Oranges and your Knock Loose now. They're doing things, and they kind of broke out of that scene, and they're playing with bigger bands and touring with bigger bands, and selling records and stuff. But I think that hardcore wise, out of the basements of America, Hatebreed was one of the early ones. So that, and you're talking about different times.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Tattoo the Earth Festival was a big break for Hatebreed. Certainly, Jamie hosting Headbangers Ball was a big deal, and him getting able to, we had one of our own at MTV playing videos of bands that were, some mainstream stuff, but I mean, a lot of bands that were on the second stage of like an Ozfest, like you said. So, I think Jamie getting sober was a big thing that helped. Selling 100 over, I think the first band on Victory Records to sell over 100,000 records. The Triple X soundtrack was huge. With I Will Be Heard for the band, there was a lot of things that played a part in Hatebreed kind of becoming um, taking us to the next level.
Yeah. And you were at that time you were kind of doing things with Ringworm, in when the band was just starting off, but you kind of left that position in that band and transitioned over into Hatebreed, um, and subsequently, kind of your the band that you previously were in kind of disbanded. Do you think you leaving had something to do with that, or is that just kind of like a natural course for that for like bands?
Well, I mean, the bands that I played in um, early on, fresh out of high school, long before Integrity or before Hatebreed, were Integrity and Ringworm. And when Hatebreed formed, they were fans of these bands. So that's how I had a relationship with these guys, because we actually even did a split record back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
Integrity and Hatebreed. So that's how everybody was always like, "Oh, you were originally a Cleveland guy. How'd you end up with these guys in Connecticut?" So, and those bands are still playing and doing well. And Terror, who I was in from 2004 until 2006 when I joined Hatebreed, obviously, is a successful band on their own, and they're doing things like that. So it's all a network and a community, and I've had a long relationship with these guys, and it's funny because we still play shows with all of these bands
Right.
now, some of which we take on tour. So, and there was a time when I was in these other bands and Hatebreed was taking us on tour. So it's all relative, it's all community, it's all friends. Call it what you want, but it's kind of it's funny how it all ended up like this, and all those bands are still doing things and putting out records, touring, and I still see all those people.
Yeah, and a couple of those older hardcore bands made some waves in the news this past week. Madball's playing Tampa soon, right? You're located in Tampa, and Madball.
I'm actually over on the Space Coast, so
Okay.
they're playing in Melbourne, which is 5 minutes from where I live. So they're over here actually too. So they're playing this week, or they're playing in a couple weeks over on my coast, and I know they're playing over on the west coast of Tampa as well. So
Cool. Yeah, and they just got a little heat for doing that New York City Park show, but uh, it was cool to see them have a show and see the fans support. But obviously, it's a touchy subject in general with it being in New York and with everything going on up there. But you know, interesting.
yeah, I was surprised to see. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's right or wrong, but it was just surprising to see a show like that. You would think something like that you would see like down here or like in Texas or something, like
Mm-hmm.
where it's a little more lax than in New York City. So it was shocking. It was a huge amount of people there. You know, for whether it was wrong or right, but they're out there doing it and they're making it happen. And if people want to go and do, that's something they can go do because the shows are going on, and people are wanting to, if that's something that it's not like there's no option, there's an option. You can go if you want, you don't have to go if you don't want to. So
Yeah, that's kind of how I approach it too. If, consume at your own risk. I'll say that.
for sure. And you know what did they're opening New York wide open here soon, right? Or they did, or
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I kind of just kind of
okay,
blank out with all the news every day. I just kind of like pick it up in
okay,
bits here or
yeah, I'm in the
there.
same boat. So
So, like we were talking about earlier, you weren't an original member with Hatebreed, but you were in bands that influenced Hatebreed. What album got your attention? Being in other bands. What was the previous Hatebreed album that really grabbed your attention to notice the band?
well, the first record kind of really respawned my interest in hardcore again because I was really into it in the 80s. And then when the band started to change and the late 80s hit and emo came in and some bands felt the need to show you how good they could play their instruments and things like that. Um, I kind of got disinterested in it. And bam, this first wave of earache bands hits Bolt Thrower and Carcass and Napalm Death and all that stuff. And I really loved it. And, you know, fast forward to the mid 90s now, and Hatebreed puts out their first record. And it had a lot of elements of Bolt Thrower meets Agnostic Front almost, because here we are tuned down to C and we're have these deeper vocals, but yet we've got these fast minute and a half, 2 minute songs and breakdowns and stuff. So it kind of caught my attention again. And I really think that, speaking as somebody, not sounding too crazy because I wasn't a part of the band then or whatever, but that's one of the best hardcore records ever made.
Agree.
Satisfaction is Death of Desire. And you know, it's just I think it's I'm glad we still play a lot of songs off that record in the set, and I think it's from beginning to end it's solid. So it really what caught my attention with that band, and then the friendship, and then to watch them sign to Universal and put out Perseverance and watch the band grow and be friends with these guys through all of it. It's like almost was like a part of it. When I joined Hatebreed, everybody's like, "What's it like to be an Hatebreed?" I was like, really, honestly, like it's the only difference is when they go up on stage, I go up with them now to play because the relationship with them was
Yeah.
was so. There were no auditions really. I mean, they called me and said, "Are you ready to be in the band? We've been talking about it for years, and we want to become a 5-piece again because there were a 4-piece there." And so to watch them grow and to those records. I mean, that first record grabbed me right out of the gate, and kind of was a breath of fresh air for a hardcore scene for me.
Yeah, that one, Satisfaction and Perseverance were like paramount in my early years because I was in high school, like just getting into high school, and Satisfaction came out, and I think I don't know, a year or so after it came out, me or my friend group got our hands on it, and then Perseverance just kind of cemented the whole like Hatebreed situation for me. But so when you came into the band, did you kind of want to bring more of that reinvited, not reinvited, but reinvigorated love for hardcore? Because it's like you said, Satisfaction kind of like got your attention back into hardcore. Like, did you want to, bring that with the Hatebreed self-titled album at all?
Well, I mean, I joined in 06,
Oh, sorry, yeah, the
Supremacy,
Supremacy. Sorry, no, yeah,
and that, and then Sean left, and Wayne came back into the band, was an original member. So, talking about hardcore and all that, another thing I really enjoyed about Hatebreed is they were doing different things. You know what I mean? There's guys in the hardcore bands playing Gibson Explorers. You don't see that ever. These guys are like opening for Sepultura, and they're now, and they're playing like and the band shirts they're wearing on stage are like Johnny Cash before that was popular and all that stuff, and that's back before people were really covered in tattoos, and Sean and Beatty are out there with the hand and neck tattoos and stuff, and there was just something about it aside from just the music that was like, all right, this is a little different. These guys aren't afraid to venture, at least with the look and the equipment they're playing and the production and all that, to be something that's a little different than just your standard hardcore stuff, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a hardcore band. So I like things like that, changing it up without changing it up. That's kind of what we do when we put out our records. We change it up a little bit without changing it up. Certainly if you listen to our last record and Satisfaction is the Death of Desire, they sound a lot different. It's different times, different productions. There's a little different things we're doing now and things like that. But then in hindsight, people would say every Hatebreed record sounds the same. They don't change anything. So there you go.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds, I guess you could call it.
I always said I never wanted to go and buy an AC/DC or Motorhead record and not have it sound like AC/DC or Motorhead. So
true, yeah.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, there are a lot of bands that find their groove and just kind of cement that groove and just keep riding it, because
especially coming up and watching a few bands try to drastically do something at the end of their career.
Yeah, true.
And you live and learn.
And in a small kind of genre such as like heavy music is in general, the bands that seem to kind of stay around are those kind of bands that don't differ from their main sound for the most part. They may add elements here or there, but the tried and true guys that are 20 plus veterans are still kind of staying true to their sound and stuff.
Well, and it's tough because, how many bands that have been around since the 90s or 80s or whatever, that are still playing now, like, you can't change the way records are made or production and all that stuff. It's going to sound different no matter what. And people, and people age and things like that. You could try as much as you want to sound exactly like you did on that first record, but it's impossible to continue and replicate that. But it is what it is. And, we've got our bubble, and we'll certainly expand the walls of that bubble without bursting that bubble. And that's Hatebreed in a nutshell when it comes to making records.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, Hatebreed's been always kind of been one of those bands that has been able to like eclipse a fan base, and grow their fan base. Like seeing them at Ozfest, because I saw them at smaller shows too, leading up to that time. But then when I saw them at Ozfest and they were like headlining the second stage, or backing up Black Label Society or something, or Zakk Wylde, you kind of started seeing like, oh, their fan base is going to become way different and way bigger because they're playing out to nu metal kind of crowd, and the nu metal crowd is also picking it up, and they're being introduced into like hardcore and another heavier, more niche groups, I guess. So you guys have always been able to do that, and it's just been
it's fortunate because we can get on one of these big radio rock or radio metal type festivals and be like the gnarliest band on it and still do well. For example, Rebel Rock coming up, and when we look at the builds for the weekend, it's a lot of mainstream stuff, and we're kind of one of the gnarlier bands on it. But then we'll go to the Warped Tour, or we would do Mayhem Fest, or we would do Ozfest or something. It's been one of my favorite things about it is that the band is universal, and the band, and we're not going to grab all those people. You have your purists. They're not gonna jump ship, and but to be able to be put in front of those crowds and have that opportunity alone, and grab a few people that might be into some other things has a lot to do with the success of the band.
Yeah. Do you find it, as someone that's been around in this kind of scene for such a long period of time, whether it's writing or performing and bringing it on stage, do you find that it's harder to bring the intensity as like you used to when you were back in the day, whether it's writing records or performing on stage?
Well, I think it's easier in the studio than it is live, but um, the thing you have to realize is um, it's no secret that the band's been around for a long time, and you feed off the energy of the crowd. When the crowd is now in their 40s, they're not out there giving it like they used to do. So I think it's crucial for us to continue to still play with younger bands. I think Warped Tour was great for us because there's a lot of younger kids there, and I was really happy we were able to get on that before it ended. And just to play with the younger bands and still be in, sandwiched between like maybe younger bands at the festival or whatever it is. So that's real important. So obviously, conjuring up energy to play is a lot harder now than it was when I was in my 20s, not even thinking about it, just going out there and doing it. But especially when it's 3 in the afternoon in Las Vegas and it's 115 degrees outside and we're in all black. So, but this is what you're known for: the energy and the positivity and the reaction and stuff. So you gotta conjure that stuff up. And then in the studio, I feel like some of Jamie's most aggressive singing was on this last album. So, and that's all conjured up from, life experiences, good or bad. But that's what Hatebreed is. It's positive aggression and it has a message. And, people expect certain things from us. We have to continue to deliver those things.
Yeah, I agree with the positive message. I think Hatebreed is one of the most positive uh, bands that I've come across because like I said, I followed you guys for a long period of time, long enough to have been diehard, casual fan, diehard, casual fan. Ebb and flows as it goes because you guys have been around for so long. You go through stages of listening to certain heavy things here and there. So I always kind of touch base back on my roots. What brought you kind of to Florida, Frank? Are you from here?
I no, I'm from Ohio originally, Cleveland. But I spent a lot of time in my life down here. I was always coming on vacation down here. Matter of fact, this is my second time living down here. In the '80s, I lived in Gainesville for a couple of years, and I moved back down probably about 12 years now. I've been down here again
Wow.
this time around. So spent a lot of time all over the state, and I just love it here. I love everything that there is to offer here. I love the hot weather. Did 36 Cleveland winters. I don't want to do that ever again. Um, but for me, this is the place to be. I've been to every state, and with maybe the exception of Hawaii, there's no other place I'd rather live in. Who the hell could afford to live there?
Yeah,
So
right.
I always tell people, I was like, I can't afford to live in Hawaii, so I live in Florida. Plus it would be a pain in the ass if I lived in Hawaii. It's already a pain in the ass because I'm in Florida and they're all up in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I can't imagine if I was in the middle of the ocean. And so, no, I love it here. I love it here, and uh, I have a great life down here, and I'm happy down here for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. I was gonna ask if it's been difficult with you living there as being, a member in a band with everyone else living up in a different area. But did you ever really live around the guys?
No, I
Yeah.
went from Cleveland to Florida, and I never went to Connecticut. And as as technology keeps advancing, and it's less and less time that I'm spending in Connecticut now. So I think it's common now for bands, especially ones that have been together for quite some time, for people to live in different places. Matter of fact, the other guitar player in the band, Wayne, is moving to California here shortly. So, and our drummer's in Poughkeepsie, New York. So he's an hour and a half or an hour away or whatever it is, but he's not even in Connecticut either. So I think, and then there were two after Wayne leaves. So original Connecticut people. So, but like I said, I think that now in this day and age, it's common to have people all over the place, and with technology as far as recording, and you know, when Hatebreed's going like normal and it's not a pandemic, then our breaks are so short in between
Yeah.
tours that we don't even need to rehearse. So there's no need for me to even go to Connecticut. I'll meet them in Europe or whatever, wherever the tour is starting. So it hasn't been too much of a pain in the butt with me being down here.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, we have international. You have a lot of international airports around you.
yes, for sure. And it's only, if I need to get up there, it's only a 2-hour flight up to Connecticut. So,
Yeah, you guys play a lot of shows when the industry is up and running. How often? How many days a year are you guys on the road?
well, I would say on and off on a normal years, in the recent years before we shut down, 6 months. But when I joined the band in '06, it was 250 to 300 shows a year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was more expecting because I always remember the band being on tour. They were just always on tour. So I would only imagine that you guys kind of kept up the same pace because that's kind of like the motif for the band.
Yeah, we're not hitting like the Australias and the South Americas and those places as much as we were before. I don't think now. So it's pretty much Europe and America, maybe some Canada stuff, throwing in a couple shows here and there. That's usually what it ends up being. So I think that's the reason, and it's kind of just overkill to be out there and do 300 some shows a year. And if we can make it work doing this amount of shows, I mean, my trade off is being home basically on vacation in Florida the other 6 months of the year. So I'm not complaining about it. But when I was living in Cleveland and, a lot younger and partying a lot more and coming home from tour to another party, I was single and then the weather sucks, man, just let me be on tour, I guess, at that point for 10 months a year, or 9 months a year, whatever it was,
Yeah.
but now that I'm down here and I got married 2 years ago and, you know, we're older now, everybody in the band, I'll be 50 this year. So, I think that, 6 months it's pretty decent.
Yeah, and you spread it out throughout the year, so it's not all at once, obviously. So it's very,
Sure.
very manageable.
Yes.
Um, so with the weight of false self, you guys wrote that and recorded it probably prior to the pandemic, right? You just kind of were sitting on it for most of the pandemic. Was that correct?
Well, yeah, because what had happened with us is we were going to shut it down in like mid 2019 because the last record, Concrete Professional, had been out for so long. And then we got offered this Dropkick Murphys and Clutch tour, which we love stuff like that because it's totally like, all right, this isn't our crowd, but we need to go make it we need to go make it our crowd. And that's the mentality before we hit the stage. So obviously those are big shows and that's a very mixed bill. So that ran until October of 2019. So then we were like, okay, now we really got to stop because the record's been out even longer. It's time to make a new album. Well, had we know what was coming 5 or 6 months later, we would have milked the road for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're one of the bands that's been away from the stage, probably one of the longest because we quit 5 or 6 months before the pandemic because the album had been out. So, and then it was record and then the record got pushed back and then it came out months later and, it's been a roller coaster. So, but that's pretty much our story. And when we do get back to playing shows, I would imagine we'll have been close to 2 years since we played. So
Yeah, that's nuts, man. That's crazy to even think about. And I mean, unfortunately, the sad undertone for like every one of my podcasts this year has been, COVID or the pandemic, and I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing about it. But it is interesting to how it affects each band differently or each person differently. So I apologize for bringing it up again, listeners and everybody else. But it is what it is. We're all living through it. You know what I mean?
I mean, you know what? Not for nothing. It's something for us to do.
Yeah, for sure.
For you to do this, for me to do this, and for the people to listen to it. It's something to do. But you know, it's funny. I always think about like when we like when we toured like bigger bands and stuff. They're like, yeah, we're like, what are you guys doing now? Like we're out on road open for like a way bigger band than Hatebreed or what do you guys, sometimes we'll ask, hey, what are you guys doing after this? Well, we're taking a year off. And then we're like, we could never take a year off. First of all, we can't afford that. Yeah. Second of all, like we have to go play shows and stuff. So it's like, now I put that into perspective. Now I know what it feels like to be off for a year. And now I'm probably going to know what it feels like to be off for 2 years in a row. So it's crazy. It's crazy to think about that. And, the funny thing, though, I was talking to the guys the other day and I was like, you know what? When we do start playing a couple shows, it'll be like 3 or 4 shows in probably. And it'll be like we never had that 2-year break. I mean, maybe for the crowds, maybe for the venues. But as far as the band's concerned and us and being up there playing, on the stage, it's going to feel like we never even had that break, probably, just because. Did I lose you there?
No, yeah, we got you back. Just because
Okay.
what? You said just
Just
because.
just just because we've been doing the band for so long.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to feel like a blink of an eye when in the grand scheme of everything. But
Sure.
it's got to be this because you've been a road veteran for such a long. I don't want to keep saying such a long time, but it is you've been in the scene for many years. This has got to be like some of the craziest thing you've ever experienced on the road, or not on the road, but in general.
Well, I like it in the fact that I get ants. I probably do the second most interviews in the band besides Jamie. So the question people always ask, "What's the craziest thing that's happened since you've been in the band?" Now I finally have an answer for them.
Yeah.
The pandemic, because it's so hard to think of something like that, and a lot of those stuffs were a lot of that stuff everybody was partying and things like that, or there's so much crazy stuff that happens out on the road, and that some stuff people might not even think crazy. I'm like that was nothing, as where somebody else might be horrified by something
Right.
like
Right.
that, or whatever. So at least I have an answer now to that question, and it definitely. I mean, and it's might not be the answer people will be looking for, but I mean, come on. I mean, think about what's going on in the world in the past, year and a half now. It's completely crazy to that we, when it's all said and done, we will have been alive during this
Yeah.
that has happened, this
Yeah.
thing that's happened.
It'll be interesting how history will look back, or how we'll all look back on it,
Sure.
as it plays out. But what's one of the things, obviously, that you're looking for, like you miss the most outside of playing live? Because obviously, playing live would be a cop out. That's every band's favorite thing. But like, what's one of the things that you miss from being in a band in regular times?
I think I try to humble myself, and when I start to think, it's real easy for me to be home in Florida where I live and married now, and have this house that I love, and we live close to the beach and all this stuff. Um, to be like, it's everything becomes work, they say, no matter how awesome your job is, net. But it's like, uh, I this is a dream to do, to be able to play in a band. I mean, when I was a young kid and I was 6 or 7 years old, and I found out about Kiss and the Who and things like this, and I had a record collection. I mean, this is the shit we dreamed of. So to be somebody that does that, um, I just look forward to living that life again and getting out there and hanging out. And aside from the shows, being around the guys, joking, we have a lot of fun together. I love the road crew that works for us. Those guys are a riot. I tend to stay up at night with those guys after they're done working and drink and stuff. And we have our road crew in Europe. I miss those guys a lot. The traveling and this and that. At this point, there's not really many places we haven't been to or haven't seen. So, but I think just being around the guys, joking, seeing other bands you're friends with at festivals is always a plus. When you are in another country far away from home and you see all these people from back home, and get to watch them play, and get to watch them do their thing, because essentially, I mean, at the end of the day, those people are really coworkers, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, we're just we're not normal people. What we do for a living, we leave our families and our kids and our pets and whatever it is, and we're gone for months at a time, and we're out there just to make people forget about life for a while and bring a smile to their face, hopefully. And when you see other people that you're friends with, doing that same thing, and I get to watch, like if I go see a band play that I know this guy, I met his family, I know that here he is out here in Europe with me. It's just that common bond and all that. I think that's another thing about it that I miss for sure, is just being around people that we know, whether it's my road crew or the other band guys or other bands. And because it's been, like I said, it'll be a couple of years since that's happened. And if we don't end up doing any festivals like overseas or anything till next summer, I mean, you're talking about almost 3 years.
Yeah.
So until we get to experience that again. And I'm a fan of music. I like to watch bands play, and I get excited when we play Hellfest and things like that, which I think is the greatest festival. And or Grass Pop or Download or Bloodstock, and go see other bands. And oh wow, we're playing the same day as these guys. I can't wait to go check it out, whether I know the band or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that I miss, is that we're so lucky to be able to be playing a festival with 10 other bands that day or something, or whatever it is that we like, to be able to just go walk over on stage and watch them play.
Yeah. It sounds like you prefer the European festival scene to rather than the American festival scene. But I've never
Well,
experienced those overseas festivals, but they definitely from afar look very cool and attractive for sure. They are huge. They seem to be huge.
well, you have to realize in America it was Mayhem Fest and Oz Fest and Warp Tour. It was the traveling festival.
Right.
It was the 3-day weekend thing didn't exist here, and now it's completely taken over. Now, how many 3-day festivals do you have in America? Riot Fest, Psycho Las Vegas, Punk Rock Bowling, Rebel Rock, Welcome to Rockville. There's tons of them now, and they're all like taking that blueprint of Europe and making a 3-day festival, and camping and things like that. But the problem is they're not as inclusive over here with all the different genres as they are over there. You'll play a festival over there and you're playing with Napalm Death and Wu-Tang Clan, or you're playing with Aerosmith and Turbo Negro. You know what I mean? So it's like, it hasn't hit over here like that yet. I think the heavier ones are more like radio metal bands and stuff. And that's great. We love those bands. We play with them. We tour with them, and that's great. And we love to get on the big festival and play shows with them. But I don't think that you've got these insane ones. I mean, there's some that are starting to pop off. I really want to check out Psycho Las Vegas, and I really wanted to go to that this year. And Merciful Fate and Blue Oyster Cult are two of my favorite bands of all time. Just, I like the diversity. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it seems like the ones that we're playing over here are like, and a lot of times they don't want Hatebreed on it because we're like the rowdy band. They don't want to bring that. People still think that it's 25 years ago and there's going to be a riot when we play and all that stuff. It's like, it's a bunch of thousands of people in a parking lot. It can happen during any band. So a lot of times they don't want that aspect. They don't want to put a bunch of like gnarlier, more hardcore bands or they want to play it safe and have it be, they don't want that element. But it just goes back to what I said. I'm like, look, our fan base is 30s, 40s. I mean,
they're not getting that crazy anymore.
No, people are bringing their kids to our shows and stuff, so which is cool.
Is that like more of would that be like an insurance liability thing over here in the States, that they're more cautious as of who they book? Because it seems like, like you said, it's way more inclusive overseas with a wider array of heavier bands playing alongside other genres as well.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing or not. That would probably be a question for Jamie because he's way more embedded into the industry on things like that than I am. But who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Well, now who knows what's going to go on? I mean, a lot of clubs have closed, and insurance of policies and door deals and whatever is going to go on now. It's going to be a different world. A lot of people just think, oh, the shows are going to go on again. It's going to be normal. It's like, well, there's a lot of politics involved behind these shows, and and as far as contracts and things like that. So they just don't know. I mean, if you're a concert venue that's barely kept your doors open through all this, are you gonna take that chance and throw all the money at the bands that you normally would when it starts opening? And what if not everybody's safe? They don't want to come, or you know what I mean? Promoters losing money, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff to think about when it does get going again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've had enough time to think about them, to where whomever is ready for that.
Put a game plan together, right?
Yeah, hopefully. What are some of the things that have that stand out to you that have changed for the better within the hardcore scene? Whether it's from like, your perspective as like an artist or as a fan of the scene.
Like just over the years, you mean?
Yeah, like what's something that's, because you've been a part of it for so long, like what's something that stood out to you over the whole time that you've been here that's, for the
Well, I
positive.
mean, I'm I'm an old fart that's going to complain about stuff sometimes, but
Well, we'll get to that too.
um,
So I just want to get your
no,
positive
no.
first.
But in all seriousness and honesty, I think that I try to explain to people, when it was the '80s and I was getting into this kind of music and going to see Celtic Frost and Slayer and Circle Jerks and all these bands, and um, it was really truly an underground back then. You had to dig to find this kind of music. There was no Sirius XM, there was no YouTube, there was no internet, there was no magazines, there was Xerox copy fanzines, and we were sending each other um, cassette tapes through the mail, and we were using calling cards because there was no such thing as cell phones to talk to fans that had the same interests as we do, like on a pay phone or like a house phone. And you would listen to college radio, and if you were lucky, you'd have a couple shows during the week for a couple hours where he would play this kind of music. You really had to be digging and hardcore into music to find out about something like Creator or something like, and I'm talking about in the 80s.
Mhm.
Well, now it's all easy to find. At the touch of your fingertips on your cell phone, you can find this stuff. You could go watch a band's videos on YouTube. I mean, these bands we worship growing up, we didn't know what the hell aside from the back of the record cover,
Yeah.
which we stared at for hours and read the lyric sheets and the thanks list and studied the crap out of while it's on the turntable. We don't know what these dudes look like. We don't know what a concert of theirs looks like. We've only seen pictures in a black and white Xerox magazine. So I think that it's a lot more accessible now, and I think that it's grown, and it's a lot more people that normally wouldn't be into that kind of thing are into that kind of thing because they can, um, you know, it's something that they can access super easy. And I don't know. I don't know if I feel that's better or it's worse.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely
um,
there's definitely a positive and negative to that. Positive, more people are going to get into the music easier, but negative to where like you're saying, like all the things that you just kind of mentioned, although albeit they are nostalgic in ways, like reading the lyric sheets, reading the thanks sheets, and finding out bands and finding out music that way, and you're in love with it more, I think, because you had to seek it out at such a in such a unique path. Like you're saying, everything wasn't as accessible in the '80s. It got a little more accessible in the '90s, and it's obviously a lot more accessible now in anywhere you look. But I do think that maybe more people will hear hard music and heavy music, but they may not be as in love with it as older people may be. That may sound
oh yeah.
weird, but there's more of a connection, I guess, like you're saying, holding the physical stuff in your hand and reading all that stuff and spending intimate time with that physical piece of thing, media, while listening to the album.
Well, all of that, and people and kids in general are way different now than they were growing up in the '80s, just because their attention span isn't there like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a YouTube generation, and compared to back then, and um, you know, there's a lot more things to keep a young person entertained nowadays than there were back then. So I think maybe, you know, I mean, think about your average person that's young. I would imagine social media eats up a ton of their times, or spending time on their phone eats up a ton of time.
Yeah, agreed.
When we were younger, we weren't sitting there and playing records takes up a ton of time, or going and doing riding BMX takes up a ton of time. It's just different times. I mean, you're talking about 40 years ago, so, or 35 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it is. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. But I get a kick out of some old record that I can't find on vinyl anymore, but there it is on Spotify. It's like, holy crap, you know what I mean? So that's a good thing, you
Yeah.
know. If I'm out and about and I'm playing my Bluetooth, or I'm in the car, I want to hear something without digging through my thousands of records and opening them up and flipping vinyl over. That's a plus for sure, without a doubt. So that's one of the major things I think that's different now. But it's cool that it's more of an option for kids to get into this kind of stuff because when we were younger, I think that not that punk rock and like thrash metal and stuff was ever mainstream, but I think it was kind of closer to mainstream because rock and metal were so much bigger in the 80s. With MTV, every other video was like Def Leppard and Quiet Riot, or like you know uh rotating with like Cyndi Lauper and Wham or whatever it was. So you know what I mean? So but now it's R&B and country and hip hop in America, and that's it.
Yeah.
And pop. And pop has influenced all that though. Pop has influenced the country and the hip hop and stuff. So at least with music being so accessible, like hardcore music and underground music like that, at least there's something else easy for people to find other than that stuff.
Right.
I'm not saying that hey, if you listen to that stuff, you can. There's a few of those bands I like, and but if they wanted to find something else, it's not as hard for them to find something else.
Agreed. And I do want to give, I guess, Jamie a little nod. He was one of the last people on MTV to really play heavy music and music that wasn't necessarily like mainstream.
Sure.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And now what is MTV? I mean,
ridiculousness.
That's it, right?
That's it. That's all. That's all they play.
Like, when was the last time they consistently had music on?
That's what I'm saying. Probably Jamie was probably part of that last wave, and then
and I really and a shout out to Don and to Eddie and them because that metal show was awesome, and I was surprised it was able to last as long as it did. And they had Jamie on a couple times, and I've done their podcasts and stuff, and they're super cool guys. And shout out to them because that metal show was awesome. And even though they might not have gotten super underground and stuff like that, they had a lot of cool guests on, and that thing had a good run.
Yeah. No, it was a good time. And unfortunate, I mean, there was a little cool factor that Headbangers Ball came on like after midnight or around midnight or whatever. It was always like staying up late to watch the show. So that was kind of cool. Gave it that like dark and dirty allure.
Yeah, I speak with Ricky Rackman sometimes because he's a race fan, and I am too. He's into NASCAR and stuff like that, and flat track racing and stuff. So I'm speaking with him sometime, and obviously Jamie. But Adam Curry, where is he at now? I don't know.
I'm not sure
because he was the original, I think.
Yeah. I know. Matt Penfield was also on Headbangers Ball for a while.
Oh, he was. That's right. Yeah.
And then he did the farm club thing. I think there was like a farm club, like
okay. Yeah, I remember that.
Kind of like a rap and rock mix up kind of thing.
I think Camila was on there once or something. I know those kids because kids. Well, we're grown men now, but they grew up in Cleveland like I did. And we would play shows together, and they were in other bands before Camila, so I've known them. As a matter of fact, Matt, who was in Camila, was in Ringworm with me for some time. Yep. So some fun facts right there.
Yeah, Camila was a cool band that I found them early on too. Pass Out of Existence, is that the album, the blue one? I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the first one on Roadrunner. That was my initial glimpse into them, and then they did their
people enjoyed that band for sure.
Yeah, it was a good band. Speaking of Rays, yeah, man, you got the hat on. Kudos to that. I like that. I didn't know Ricky was a Rays fan as well, but that's interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you misheard me, but race, like
race NASCAR. Fan. Okay,
yeah. He's a big race car guy. But speaking about the Rays, like I'm pretty into sports, watching sports when I'm home and things like that. Now I could care less about Brady and the Bucks or I'm not a big hockey guy. If I was, I would probably float towards the Lightning. But I'm definitely a Tampa Bay Rays fan, and I'm definitely a Florida Gators fan. I did, like I said, I lived not to date myself, but when I lived in Gainesville, Emmitt Smith was the running back for the Florida. So yeah. I'm showing my age for sure now, but it's just the Rays are a fun team. They don't have a big fan base. They certainly don't have the money yet. They are in the World Series last year. They were in the World Series, in the late 2000s, and they've
definitely been in the playoffs a handful of times in the last handful of years too, and they've
Sure, and
yeah
they just make it exciting. We're struggling a little bit. We're sitting around 500 this year. I watch the games every night, but I just Tropicana Field's all of 2.5 hours from where I live, so I don't get to games as much as I'd like to. But it's something else to do when I'm home from only problem is they're on the West Coast now, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, man. I'm sleeping on the couch. I can't make it to the so.
yeah
Just another cool thing about living down here. When I do get over there, it's nice to go to games. The ballpark's cool because it's indoor, and it doesn't matter how hot it is outside or how much thunderstorms we have, which we have tons of down here.
yeah. It's like it's
Um,
always 72 degrees in that bad boy.
I know. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a game in there, and I just hear the boom outside from the lightning and the
Oh
thunder.
yeah.
But it's a fun team to watch, and it's just a shame that when you go to Yankees and Red Sox games over there, there's more Yankees and Red Sox fans there than there are Rays, and I'm not exaggerating at
Oh
all.
no. Yeah, coming from yeah, you can. I'll vouch for you on that. I lived in Tampa for a number of years, and that's why, like I said, I got wrapped up in them. And yeah, when the Yankees come to town, it's the Yankees' home. They have it's like basically their home stadium there. But they
Oh
also
yeah,
do they play spring ball in Tampa. So
sure.
and like every other New Yorker that ages wants to come to Florida. So there's a lot of transplanting going
Yeah,
on. I mean, the whole
yeah.
team moves
But
down there in spring.
also, I think when other when other teams over there, even like the Indians and the Twins and the Tigers, because I feel like, and a lot of people don't know this, but like one of the things I've noticed living down here is on the east coast of Florida, which runs along I-95 and the Atlantic Ocean, you've got these people that come down here and retire or move because they don't want to pay the crazy tax or whatever. And they all come from New York, Connecticut, New
Hmm.
Jersey, Rhode Island, Boston, because they want to stay on the eastern seaboard and they want to stay on I-95. As where you go to the other coast of Florida and it runs along I-75. So they all come down from Ohio and
Yeah.
Michigan, Kentucky, and Illinois. You have a lot more people from those parts of the United States on that coast.
Yeah.
So even when you have some of these Midwest teams coming into town, interleague play with the Cardinals, I went to a game once and it was like, my God, the whole stadium was red,
Yeah.
and it's everybody's cheering. It's kind of disheartening. You feel bad for the team
Well, I mean,
because
I think the team probably knows it because they're relatively new in baseball too. They haven't been around 50
I
years or
mean,
so. They
1998.
I
It's
know,
not
but they're small market, I guess you want to call it.
well, sure, for sure. Well, it's a shame because I think the two lowest attendance teams in baseball are the Marlins and the Rays. I
Yeah.
think people just are not. They just don't follow the baseball teams down here. They follow the teams of where they've moved from. Yet the Buccaneers games are packed. The Orlando Magic draws.
I don't understand that because the last 10 years have just been hard. I'm an Orlando Magic fan. I'm a Magic fan,
Oh yeah,
Gators fan, and a Rays fan.
okay.
So we share some of the same teams, but I don't understand the Magic draw. I get so upset by the Magic right now.
Yeah, I think basketball is one of those things where you've got 3 or 4 teams that have a chance of winning it every year, and that's it.
Yeah, you're
But I
probably
think a
right.
lot of sports have became like that now.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
why the
yeah,
Rays make it interesting. That's why it's so interesting with the Rays. And
it's low income. Sure, it's low income baseball.
I just got done doing a podcast with JB, the guitar player for August Burns Red, and he is a big baseball fan too. So apologies
Okay.
because we're talking about baseball again on another episode. But he elaborated that he thought it was really cool that the way the Rays like handle their pitching and the way they approach the game and stuff like that. He was very respectful about it, and I was like, that's probably why I enjoy because I didn't get into baseball until I moved down there and I got wrapped up in it. I played it as a kid, but I never paid attention to like
Sure.
major league. But it was very it's so interesting. So interesting. Like, like we watch the Rays, so it's like, people ask like, why are you into the Rays? It's like that's why, I guess. They're just
Yeah,
very
I know. I
interesting to
mean,
watch.
and they have it. It's the farm system's incredible. So they're always getting players, and they make it work with what money they have. But you know, I'll go to. I spent some time down in Port Charlotte, which is where they spring train. I would go to those games, and even go to there was a Florida State League, which is like single A
Hmm.
for the Rays. The Stone Crabs would play down there, and we had the manatees over here by where I live, and it's like single A for a lot of these major league teams, but even those have kind of gone away now, so those teams don't exist anymore. But to watch, I think what are the other farm teams sort of raised the Montgomery Biscuits
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the Durham Bowls and stuff. To see some of these players come out of those systems and excel in baseball is a lot of fun. Um, Comparable to the NFL draft, I guess, which just happened this past weekend in my old hometown of Cleveland.
Yeah, it looked very dreary that night. Did you
I
watch?
mean,
Did you watch the
yeah,
coverage?
well, Cleveland this time of year will be 75 and sunny, and then it'll snow tomorrow. So,
It was.
they get snow in May up there sometimes. It's now you know why I'm down here. So, um, but yeah, it was just cool. I have a friend that works for the Browns, and he told me, it was great for the city. People were here for 2-3 weeks, and big headache for us, but as far as the fans are concerned, and for the city, it did good. So that's good.
Yeah, man. Well, that is that's cool that they had the draft there. It's very cool that my team got the number one pick, and hopefully it will drag us out of the muck that we've been in for the last 28 years. So
Your
fingers.
Jags
I'm a Jag fan. Yeah,
and Trevor Lawrence went to Jaguars, right?
yeah. We also
Yeah,
got we also
I
got
mean,
Urban.
I'm
We
sure
also got Urban Meyer
he,
as a coach.
he's not in the SEC, so I can cheer for him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
but anymore anyhow. But it'll be interesting. I'm cheering for the kid. I think it'll. Hopefully it works out. But you never know. I mean, a lot of these hot shots in college, it just doesn't work out in the pros.
Yeah, I
Look
agree.
at all these. Sure. I mean, look at all these quarterbacks the Browns went through over the years, Manziel and Brady Quinn and all this stuff, and just now they got Baker and they seem to be doing okay finally. So
Yeah, you guys did get a lot of earlier
well,
quarterbacks.
I'm a Broncos fan, believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm saying you guys as like Cleveland-based people
Yeah,
or Cleveland-based team fans. Yeah,
I've been a Broncos fan since the days of Elway, and pretty much since Elway and Manning, we have had about 500 quarterbacks, and they're all terrible. So,
yeah.
And it really shocked the crap out of me right before the draft that they got Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah. It's been a lot of shakeups in the quarterback position the last year or two in the NFL. It's been crazy, and now Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to play for Green Bay. It's even more crazy.
I saw that. That's insane.
Yeah, a lot of my childhood is just falling apart. You know what I mean? All the stuff that I used to know.
I gotta say, like when the playoffs and the season started, I didn't think that the Bucs were going to be there, and then not only did they go, they won it, and I was like, I'm not, I just can't stand. I couldn't stand the Patriots because I will say this: I do appreciate drunk Brady throwing the trophy from boat to boat more than I appreciate, Belichick Brady Patriots. So
yeah, I do think that's probably my favorite image of. I think those are my favorite images of him. Him doing that, and then him being escorted by the third string quarterback. He's grabbed him and trying to get him away from the press. That's my favorite image of Tom, because you can clearly tell Tom doesn't give a fuck. He's got a fistful plus of rings at this point, and no one can tell him anything.
And we love this one because he got to show the world he could do it without Belichick. So Belichick didn't make the playoffs, and they're just a mess over there with Cam Newton.
Yeah, and then no one called other than the Bucs. The Bucs are the only one that called for Tom. So
crazy.
That is crazy, but hopefully it's a one and done situation, and Tom can retire soon. It'd be great.
Oh, man, he's going to come back and win probably
another 5 years or something. You never know.
Oh my God, that guy! He plays like he's 25. I will say that, man. I can't stand him, but it's like you can't believe that guy's the age he is, and he's out there playing at that level.
No, I know. And the same. I mean, I'd said the same with Manning too. I hated Manning for a long time because obviously he was an Indianapolis Colts quarterback, and he kind of just bitch slapped the Jaguars many times. But I Tom Brady and Peyton Manning I hated them for so long. But then as you grow older, you're just like, damn, they're just that good though too.
Yeah, at some point you have to give them respect, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, Frank, it's been great having you on the show, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you. I think we're going to be there. Well, I don't think, but I'm definitely going to be there in Alabama. So,
cool.
Yeah, hopefully we can link up then. And It'll be great to see live music again, and I haven't seen Hatebreed in a number of years, so it's gonna be an awesome time. Is there anything else you want to kind of shout out? Any other band, any other personal project, any other kind of situation that you kind of want to let the people know about?
Well, I have my own hot sauce out that I for the last year now that I really can't say enough good things about. The people at Hella Hot Sauce that have made that happen, and he's up in Northern California, and he works with bands, and he does a there's a Guar themed one, and there was a that band Ghoul, and I think Zetro from Exodus is going to have one out with them now.
Mm.
So I cook. I love to cook. I do all the cooking in my house, and I do a lot of grilling outside or cooking in the house. So I just this is kind of like an extension of that, and I'm finally happy to have that out. If anybody's interested in it, you can follow me on my social medias, Florida Frank, real easy, and then the link is in my profiles. But other than that, try to be nice to each other.
Yeah, man.
This thing's almost over, and it's just nasty out there. And hopefully, once this thing ends, we can get back to a little bit of normalcy, and hopefully things won't be so divided. So hopefully, us playing shows and getting back out there and doing what we do will help that.
Hopefully as well. I agree. Hopefully everyone can remain cool, calm, and collected, and just treat everyone nice. And let's get back out to live entertainment, guys.
For sure. Thank you for the interview, and I'll see you in Alabama or maybe at a Rays game.
No, dude. Yeah. Now that I know you cook, we're gonna have you back on because I love to cook as well, and we can talk cooking and Rays because they'll win the World Series this year. So we'll hopefully a year from now we'll touch base on the how we enjoyed them winning instead of almost winning, and then yeah, man, I look forward to seeing you at Birmingham.
Great. I'd love to come back. Thanks for the interview.
No problem, man. Thanks, man.